Hello, Powers Resource clients, colleagues, and friends. I'm Tara Powers, CEO of Powers Resource Center. And today's tip is really around building trust on your remote team. I came up with this topic today because most recently I was talking to a colleague who worked in a very large 100% remote company with 900 people, and she does a lot of coaching with internal teams. And one of the issues that she said she's been doing a lot of coaching on is that the employees do not feel comfortable telling their managers and leaders how they really feel, what's going on for them, if they're having a bad day, if they are struggling emotionally with everything that's going on, if they're having a tough time, carving out time to get their work done. And they were afraid that it would impact their jobs. Maybe they might get let go if they gave any inkling that there was anything wrong going on, that they were having a tough time. And that is not going to work long term to build trust on a virtual team. You are not going to get the best from your people if you are not creating a safe, psychologically safe space for your team virtually. So I'm going to go over a couple key tips for you to be building trust on your virtual team. And one of the things you might want to do with these tips is actually write them down on your virtual whiteboard when you have your next team meeting, and have your team actually give each of these a score from 1 to 5. 1, we don't really do this well, or 5, I think we're doing a great job. You could even do a poll so it's anonymous on a virtual team call. But this is a really great way to just kind of figure out, where are we and where is my team incorporating these behaviors that build trust. Because honestly, that is one of the most important things that we all need to be focusing on, is that strong connection with the people we work with in the midst of all of the chaos. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I'm going to turn my laptop here. So the first thing, and most important, and you've probably heard a lot about this from a lot of amazing management gurus, is the team and everyone on it must be willing to be vulnerable. So what does that mean? Patrick Lencioni actually defines vulnerability-based trust as the willingness to admit, I'm wrong, I need help, you're better at this than me, right? It's that level of safety that I can trust. If I say something honestly, I'm not going to get thrown under the bus. I'm not going to get shunned from the team, right? I can be vulnerable about what's going on for me. And Brene Brown, who I am a certified facilitator for her Dare to Lead program, one of the things that we talk about in our certification was the myths of vulnerability. Why sometimes do team members they have an unwillingness to be vulnerable? Normally it's because of how we were brought up, what we were taught about vulnerability. Definitely more difficult for your male colleagues than female, because men were taught you cannot be vulnerable. But let me talk to you about a few myths. Number one is that vulnerability is a weakness. That is not true. Vulnerability is the fastest path to trust on a team. Second myth, I don't do vulnerability, right? I don't know how. That's not good for me. It actually is a really important relationship building skill. It is important for your own growth and development. So if that's a myth that you hold, you may want to rethink that. Myth 3, I can go it alone, right? There might be some of your team members or even yourself who think, I don't need to tell anybody that I need help. I'll figure this out. I'm going to, just power through. I'm going to, try to make it work. Guess what? You can very quickly unravel without getting support, especially with the added stress that we have all around us constantly right now. Myth 4, you can engineer the uncertainty and discomfort out of vulnerability. You cannot. It is not comfortable, right, to be vulnerable, because it is exposing what is going on for someone. It makes us feel raw. But in the end, it is the most valuable thing we can do to build trust, to build connection and to build relationship, authentic relationship. Myth 5, trust comes before vulnerability. No, vulnerability comes, and that is what helps to create trust. And then myth 6, vulnerability is full disclosure. It isn't, right? We don't have to disclose our deepest, darkest secrets to be practicing vulnerability. Vulnerability can be very simply, I don't understand what you just said. This is really hard for me and emotional for me, and here's why. Or I was really attached to that project, and now that we're moving in a different direction, I feel really like I'm not valued right now, and I just needed to tell you that. That's vulnerability, right? We don't have to fully disclose everything in order to build trust and be vulnerable. So number 1 is vulnerability. That is the most important thing that your team can do to build trust. So you want to be thinking about, how good are we at doing this? How are we as a team at being vulnerable with each other? All right. Number 2, 7 ways to build trust on your remote team. Number 2 is show the way. So what do we mean in terms of that? You want to always be looking for opportunities to connect the dots on a virtual team, to align what everyone is working on, what the team is working on, with what the company's trying to do, with how we are trying to accomplish goals that are meaningful and that make sense. We need to make sure everyone understands how their efforts on a team contribute, to the greater good. So if I'm working with a team member, we should always be talking about, why does this matter? How is this fitting into the larger picture, right? If we think about our company as a system and all of our customers as part of that system, how is what I'm doing impacting that system in a big or small way? Make sure that we're verbalizing this as team members, and certainly if you're the leader, why what people are doing matter. So that's another thing that you can assess. How well do we as a team show the way? How well do we communicate why what someone's doing is important? All right, the third step or way to build trust on your team is to give recognition. So one of the things that we have to be doing as often as possible, whenever we see it, is pointing out when people are doing something that has made a difference, that is helpful, that is above and beyond, or maybe they just always show up, right? They're always on time to meetings. They always contribute. They always participate. They always come with good questions. They always ask good questions. We need to be pointing that out and not be shy about it. We need to speak up and be sure that people understand that what you did or what you said mattered, and here's why, and here is why it makes a difference for me, or why it makes a difference for the team. So we want to be sure we state the facts of what they did or what we heard or what we observed, why it matters, and why it mattered to you personally. Fourth, very important way to build trust on a team is to take responsibility. So there will always be a time, if it hasn't happened already, I'm sure you've experienced this, where something's going to go wrong. You missed a meeting, right? You forgot something in all the chaos of working at home and your kids at home and having to care for elderly parents, whatever your situation is, maybe you dropped the ball. One of the most important things that we can do as virtual team members is take responsibility and step up, be vulnerable, be honest, and then come up with solutions about how we're going to figure out this problem and where I need your input. It is so important that we don't throw each other under the bus, that we assume good intent, and that we lead and operate with grace. This is a very interesting, dynamic time for everyone. And so taking responsibility personally and giving your team members grace when they admit wrongdoing is really, really valuable and important way to build trust. Okay. The fifth way is To be transparent. Whoops, excuse me. So to be transparent, well, what does that mean? That means that on a virtual team, we need to figure out how everything we do, everyone can see. So whether that is definitely using your technology appropriately and agreeing how we're going to use this technology to keep each other updated, that's one way of creating transparency, right? Progress updates, work transparency, deadlines, how close am I to getting things done? But also sharing the latest information, everything that I know, right? Trends that I'm researching or that I'm seeing, things that I'm hearing our customers say. Definitely sharing that as often and frequent as I possibly can. Explaining any process changes to my team, updating team members on progress, which we already said, being clear about the goals that you have and what support you need to achieve them, and sharing how you need to be communicated with, what you need to be effective and successful. That is what transparency is all about. And being transparent and open and honest is really important to building team trust. Okay, let's look at the next one. This is a biggie. Don't let issues linger on your virtual team. Okay, it is so easy for issues, conflict on a virtual team to be just brushed under the rug because we can easily hide behind our computer or behind chat or email. And we must be quick, immediate to respond to any misunderstandings. If you are in a meeting and you noticed a team member was frustrated or upset about something you said, and maybe the meeting wasn't the appropriate time to address it, you immediately follow up after that meeting and find out what you can do to clear the air. What can you do to clear up any misunderstandings that happen? It is so important that you immediately and quickly resolve any conflicts, frustrations, disagreements, or simmering tensions, because in a remote environment, those can escalate and grow and mushroom so quickly that if we don't deal with them, we are going to be left with a completely dysfunctional and siloed team. So you're going to have people that are just heads down doing their work, and they only connect with you for a yes or no answer or to update their progress. You're not operating as a team then. You're operating as a bunch of individual contributors. And so we need to definitely be able to give people feedback, to ask for what we need. And I want to share some information with you that we talk about in our Dare to Lead program about giving engaged feedback. You will know that you have trust on your team when you are willing to sit down with someone and give them honest, open feedback. When you're willing to put the problem in front of you rather than between you, right? This is a problem that we both need to figure out together. This isn't something that is between you and me, right? A tit for tat. I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to ask questions. And if there was a misunderstanding, I am fully ready to accept that I may not understand everything. I may not have all the information to really understand where you were coming from. If there's a lot of trust and I'm ready to give feedback, I'm also ready to acknowledge what you do well and how you have helped rather than just focus on your mistakes or shortcomings. I recognize your strengths and how you can use them to overcome a challenge that we may be facing. I can hold you accountable. I can ask good questions like, hey, we agreed that we were going to get this done by Friday and I didn't hear from you. This really set me back and I want to talk about it, right? I can hold people accountable without shaming or blaming them. And I'm open to owning my part, right? Taking responsibility, which we just talked about. I can genuinely thank someone for their efforts rather than criticizing them for their failings. I can talk about how resolving these challenges will help us both grow and actually create an opportunity. I can model vulnerability and openness that I would like to also see from you. And lastly, if I'm really willing to be honest and trustworthy and give feedback, I am aware if there are any power dynamics between us or any implicit bias when I am giving feedback to you. So, those are some things for you to consider when you think about, hey, I do have some issues with my team members, and we've been letting them go. We need to step up and actually give each other feedback. And then finally, our last step or way in terms of creating trust on your team is creating a safe space. So, number 7, so interesting. There we go. Number 7, creating a safe space is at the bottom there. And basically, this really relates to something that we all know. We all know this. I certainly know this as a learning and development professional for 20 years, is that psychological safety is so important on a team. 2 years ago, Google conducted a study, I'm sure you've heard about it, on what makes a high-performing team. How do we create it? Guess what they came up with? Psychological safety. For those of us that have been teaching this for a long time, we were like, no, duh, right? We know that, but it doesn't mean it's actually happening. So when we think about psychological safety, that requires every single remote team member to work towards fostering a culture where we openly communicate, where it is free of judgment. We do not judge each other. We listen to understand, and we listen with curiosity. When we make decisions, we discuss alternative ideas and approaches together and collaboratively to arrive at the best decision. And when someone gives an idea, we don't say, that is the craziest thing I ever heard, right? We actually say, that's really interesting. Help me understand how that could work, right? And we say it with curiosity, not with criticism. And finally, we work very hard to keep those doors to open virtual communication available. That is really important to create that safe space. So those are our 7 ways to build trust on a virtual team. Let's go over them really quickly again. Number 1, be vulnerable. Number 2, show the way. Number 3, give recognition. Number 4, take responsibility and ownership. Number 5, be transparent. Number 6, do not let issues linger. And number 7, create a safe space. So as I mentioned, I encourage you to put these 7 things up on a poll and just see how well are we doing this as a virtual team. And that'll give you an indication of where you need to do a little work, because this is important. We can't be screwing around right now, right? If your company and your team isn't paying attention to these things, I am telling you that you're going to have a very difficult time moving forward and getting through this pandemic, which could last a little longer than I think most of us thought. So these are things that we need to intentionally consider, talk about, work on, be open about discussing, and just wherever you're at, move forward from there. Don't worry if you're not in a good space, right? Don't worry if your team is struggling. You can take simple steps to move forward. And of course, we're here to help. Thank you, everybody. Have a safe and connected week. Bye-bye.